All right, we're live. What up, people? This is Noble Ackerson again. And I want to welcome everyone to the Lost Explorers show. Actually, I've never called it that before, but I'll call it that now. I normally just say Lost Explorers podcast. And why am I doing this? So I've been asking myself for a while now, where the Glass Explorers are. Glass came out in, was it 2012, 2013? There was a community, a passionate community of enthusiasts around it. And by and large, were super awesome people. And then time passed, the media told us nobody wanted glass anymore, and people felt a little self-conscious about wearing the device. I've got my device here. I normally always wear it. But I don't like the glare because I have my prescriptions on it. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of do a, where are they now kind of thing, sort of find them, go out on the beaten path, see whether there are any explorers wandering around, and pull them and ask them a bunch of questions and then call it a day. And we're calling that Lost Explorers. These episodes, or at least the first season, are going to be 5 episodes. We're going to cover entrepreneurship, which is what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about connected fitness, connected things like IoT, wearable technology, and automotive technology. If you've already listened to a previous episode, you've heard, thought leaders and passionate former glass explorers, or just people in the industry that are super jazzed about one of those topics, as I am. And we just, shoot the shit and just talk and just have fun for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, wherever life takes us within an hour. With that introduction of the show, and I have to do that for the first couple episodes. Hopefully it won't get old. With that, I'd like to introduce you to a lost explorer that I found. I wouldn't say she's lost because she's still an explorer and she's still passionate about it. You've probably heard of her before. If not, you've probably seen some of her work without realizing that she's actually the genius behind it. And that person is Virginia Poltrak.
Hello.
Virginia, what's up?
Genius. I like that. That's a word I don't get to hear enough. Thank you.
You're right. You're right. I don't believe you.
No, it's true. It's true.
Virginia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm doing a 2-week sprint with this thing. I'm going to try it out. If it takes off, it takes off. Don't be disappointed if it doesn't take off, because we would have learned and out of, scratched that itch of catching up with a bunch of explorers. So
I suspect it will do really well, because I feel the same way about this that you do, and I suspect a lot of people do, right? We had a great community, and I shouldn't say had. Past tense is perhaps not correct, because I know a ton of us are still in contact, but yeah, I think Lost Explorers is appropriate. I like the name.
Great. All right, let's jump right into it. Who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I am Virginia. I live in Western Pennsylvania, and I do lots of things. So now I just say I'm an artist, right? Because that's the easy answer. But I make images for glass and watch faces, and for people to use it on Twitter to promote things. I'm lucky enough to work with the Women Tech Makers team, and they are lovely. I make drawings. I do all kinds of stuff. So as long as it's making an image that goes somewhere, I like doing it.
And one of the things that I admire most about you, Virginia, is that you are a brand genius. Actually, I invited you to talk about brands, but I think right before we started recording, we found something that we mutually found more exciting than branding, or equally as exciting as branding. But speaking of branding, so is Virginia the brand? Is Fat Russell the brand? Tell me a little bit about how you came about.
So this is an excellent question. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I have an answer for that. So I needed to start a company and I needed a name for it. So I named it Fat Russell after my dearly departed dog. And so initially, right when I first started it, the goal was Fat Russell will be out there and people will know Fat Russell. They won't really know Virginia, but they'll know Fat Russell and they'll know the work that is being done by Fat Russell. And the complete opposite thing happened. So I think more people know me and they know that I have a company. So I'm still sort of working that out, and I think it's okay that turned out that way, right? So at least I'm, people see my work. I guess that's the important part. It's less important the brand that they know behind it, I guess. So yeah, I definitely I don't have all the answers. I think that's the important takeaway.
We'll dive into that, because this episode is actually about entrepreneurship, right? And I want to sort of double tap into why you think you don't know, and where that road leads founders who either founders who think they figured it all out, or founders who sort of learn as they go. We'll get into that as well. But you mentioned just now that you actually do art for wearables, and you also mentioned glass. Given that this is a Lost Explorer program, why did you become a glass explorer?
So I historically was very reticent to use technology. That was just my personal bias. I felt like there's no room for creativity or exploration, which is wrong now. But at the time, that's how I felt. Until my husband, Jono, came home one night and he was like, check out this video about this thing called Google Glass. So we watched the video, and I liked that Google said, yeah, we don't know what people are going to do with it. Do whatever you want. Go crazy. And I thought, that's something I can get excited about, right? I like that. So I thought, I can take pictures of drawings with it. I can make videos. We can work on apps for it. We can do whatever we want. Like, I want that device. So I liked that there was just this open-ended question, right? There's not a right answer. Just do whatever you want. That was the thing that attracted me to it.
Perfect. And you chose which color?
Sky.
Sky. So you're the second sky of the day. Today I interviewed Alan Furstenberg, who's also a sky, and everyone knows Alan. I'm sure you know Alan as well.
I admire Alan's dedication to matching as much of his wardrobe as he can I need to up my game in that respect, because Alan is really good.
Yeah, he went full glass on that. All right. So what did you, and I say it in past tense mostly because there was what Gartner called their hype cycle, right? When glass reached where you couldn't go a day without hearing about glass. During that period, what did you like or love about glass?
So I think the biggest surprise to me, before I got the device, I sort of in my mind thought, here's what it could look like, and here's what I could do, and here's, where that could possibly lead. I did not expect at all the community and the people that I would meet and how much of an impact that would have on me personally.
Right.
I mean, big time, cannot overstate that. But I just, I didn't also realize how much fun we would have or how much I would learn. I went from disliking technology to taking Android development classes. And if you would have said that to me 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would have said you were completely insane.
That's amazing. And I've actually been following you in the social media channels and sort of followed closely, and actually been really inspired about how you sort of have grown your brand over the course of time. And you're right. It's almost like a learning. It's like you're following the journey of Virginia, right? You're following the wins, the disappointments, and you're very open about that. I think there's room for a lot of founders or people who want to establish a good brand. There's a lot of lessons to take from you and how you're doing it. You're open, you're transparent. You don't just give the good, you also give the unexpected and the bad, and some of the challenging things as a woman tech maker. And that's such a great title, actually. As a woman tech maker, how the things that you go through and some of the things that, a black male or, an Asian female. Oh, I'm sorry. I would actually include you guys all together, just females, just a black male, white male won't go through because of that gender bias and all that stuff. So that there's a lot of lessons there.
Yes.
And
it's weird too, because before Glass, I was not in tech communities at all. Like I was pretty much exclusively in design communities, which looks a little different. Right. So that was sort of an education too. But I think in a weird way, how to best articulate this. So like when we all got Glass, we all sort of had these plans in our minds of what we could do and where it would go, but there was a lot we didn't know. Right. So we're building apps, but we don't know if we will ever be able to monetize them. Will there ever be a Google Play for Glass apps, or can we include ads, or what? Right. And I would meet people and they would say like, oh, that's great. What are you going to do with it? And I'm like, I don't know is the honest answer. Like there's decisions that I'm not a part of that are going to affect me. And all I can do right now is kind of try my best and see what happens.
I love that. And isn't that the best segue, or even the best parallel to entrepreneurship itself, right? Because we were talking right before the show that you might actually think that a founder has figured it all out, that there's a journey laid out. There used to be a time when I'm older than I look, like back in 2000, 2001, I wanted to start my own company. And in order to do that, it was so intimidating to get started because I had to have a business plan. I actually had to lay everything out and write every single thing that I wanted to do and my mission statement and everything. In a sense, that really doesn't matter, right? Because once you get started and once you start making and actual people start using your product, or people start appreciating your art, you notice that life takes you, or the whole process takes you in a completely different direction, ideally in the direction that serves the needs of the people who come to depend on appreciating your work on a daily basis. So isn't that like a great weird parallel though?
I totally agree with that. And I have, so while I think it's great to make plans, two things. I think that one, you can get bogged down with all of the I intend tos. And I'm a much bigger fan of like, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. Because I think if you build up all this stuff in your mind of like, here's what I need to do in X and Y and Z, you haven't done anything. And so I'm like, me personally, I make a bigger effort to just sort of start doing and figure it out. Right. But as for the serendipitous things that happen, one of my favorite Glass apps that we built was Word of the Day, which I think the only reason that as many people used it as they did is because Chris Vukin, who's another explorer, who's a great person, love that guy, shared a vignette of the Word of the Day with something that related to it and posted it online. And then all of a sudden it was a game.
It became
like,
a thing.
I would love to take credit for that, but wasn't my idea. Like right. Chris did it and it took off, and there's no way we could have predicted that.
Right.
So I find that like, yeah, sometimes you get lucky and one of your friends is like, hey, this would be cool. And you're like, how did I miss that? Like that changes everything. So I've been very fortunate, I think, to kind of have that happen a couple times, which is good.
Yeah. And it all comes back to sort of one of the core issues with me when I got into building stuff for Glass. I didn't do such a good job validating, understanding the problem that I was trying to solve. I just wanted to adapt something that worked on mobile and so bring it over to smart classes. And I learned a very good lesson. I wouldn't trade it for, for anything, that at the end of the day, you had to sort of, you weren't solving a problem for yourself alone. You were solving a problem for, in my case, the Glass community, people who thought it might be a good idea to work out hands-free. And so I guess the takeaway with all of this is, understanding a group of people and what they need and how to serve that need is a pure definition of a market opportunity.
Right.
And regardless of what it is, if it's a market opportunity, it's a market opportunity. And if you can ace that, boom.
You're good. I have to say though, and it's interesting too, we were talking about this earlier, like how we see ourselves versus how other people see us. Because from where I've been sitting this whole entire time that I've known you, I have had the utmost respect for what you're doing. And to me, right, I think like, God, he has it all figured out. And like, he's so good at this. And I need to sort of look at what he's doing and what is he doing right that I'm not doing? And like, what lessons can I learn from Noble, basically, right?
Right.
And so, but then I'm the first person to say like, oh, I don't have it figured out and I'm trying my best, but I don't know that I'm always getting there. And then someone else will say to me like, oh, but you know, from where I'm sitting, you look like you have it figured out. And I'm like, I don't have it figured out.
And I figured out why founders have that, why you have that, that doubt and I have that doubt. If you actually read a series of founders books, sort of dive into, you know, the backstories of these successful founders, none of them knew what was coming. I just recently at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, President Obama and Mark Zuckerberg were sitting right next to these three founders. And Mark said something just that I knew already, but just to hear it again, just cemented this whole part of this conversation. He said, you know, when he first started Facebook, he just wanted to create something to help, you know, people at a specific school connect and share their thoughts with each other. You know, he always thought that some big company like AOL or, you know, Citrix or somebody was going to come by and build, you know, what he had dreamed about. So he was just doing, he was just making, he was just seeing how far it could go. He did not have a roadmap. And you hear this time and time again. I'll give you another example. Richard Branson in his book talks about, you know, just failing and just, you know, trying it again and not doing the thing that caused him to fail the last time around. And I've done this entrepreneurship thing for a while enough. I've been lucky enough to talk to people like Kevin Plank, who started Under Armour, and I asked him, you know, like who he goes to for advice. And you know what he said? He actually said that he had gone to Richard Branson once and asked, you know, on his island, he's like dropping names and dropping islands. And he goes, so I'm on Richard Branson's island. And I asked Richard Branson, you know, so what should I do? I've just made my first X number of dollars and I've been privileged enough to be in front of you now. Like, so what do I do next? Where do I go from here? And Richard Branson goes, and I'm paraphrasing here. Richard Branson goes, I have no idea what to tell you or how to tell you to run your business because I don't know your business. But I can tell you that there are a bunch of fine ladies outside on the beach if you want to go join them or something to that regard. Like that's the thing. It's like the guy just did the most effective pivot because he had no clue.
Right.
No one knows what you're in than you. And being a founder gets so lonely where you just look outside and you look and you think everyone's figured it out. But, you know, we're all figuring it out as we go along.
I actually saw a really funny tweet about sort of entrepreneurship and especially from working from home. And it was the 3 stages. And one was like, yay, I'm home in my pajamas. And then the second step was like, oh, there's a pigeon outside. And the third step is when you've been alone far too long and it's really getting to you. And it's like, oh, I hope the pigeon stops by today. It's just, but it does, it gets really isolating and it's tough. But I think, I don't know, one of the things that I try and do when I'm like, okay, what's next? And what do I need is to just sort of take a step back and like, okay, what's on the to-do list for right now, today, instead of sort of sitting and freaking out, like what is an actionable thing I can do right now to sort of get my head back in a better space.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. So back to Glass. What did you do specifically for Glass? I know you mentioned word of the day. I know you did a bunch of other things. I'd like for you to dive in on that. And What are you doing currently with glass? What are you planning on doing with a future version of glass?
So we actually did, and by we, again, I'm referring to my husband Jono, who did the development part of it. But we built a couple apps. We built Glassentation, which was for parsing out the notes in PowerPoint slides so that you could use glass during presentations. We did Word of the Day. We worked on Flash Stacks with a bunch of other awesome people, which is basically a way for people to send whatever information they wanted to their glass. What else did we work on? That's terrible. I should know all of this.
No.
I personally
that's
did a bunch of drawing videos and just images with, whatever I was drawing, because glass is a great way for me to be like, hey, I'm on vacation and here's this building I drew, and let me hold the drawing up next to the actual, building to show that, which is awesome. Which I still do. My only reticence with using glass now, so I used to wear it every day. I would take it everywhere with me. I don't do that as much, but honestly, the only reason is because I'm worried if I break it, that I won't be able to get a replacement. To be clear, I don't think that nobody owes me anything. I'm fine with, whatever. But if I broke it, I would probably have to buy a new pair. So I'm trying to sort of get as many miles out of this one as I can. I still do use it for drawings, to take photos and make, YouTube videos. And I will probably continue to do that as long as I have a working glass unit, because I love it for that, honestly.
Okay, perfect. If you were Ivy Ross, or if, Jeannie granted a wish to me to grant you the opportunity to be Sergey Brin for the day, specifically with glass, for a month, what direction would you take glass, and what would you like to see in the next version of glass?
What would I like to see? There's actually, so I would like to be able to fold the pair that I have, which I know is a small detail, but I think that would be a big deal. I also, and I know other people have said this, but I'm a huge fan of this, unrealistic as it may be, but since I have a personal genie, this is what I'm doing with it.
Okay.
I would literally give a glass unit to anyone that wanted one, because then everybody could try it, everybody would use it. A lot of these, I think, manufactured issues and problems that came out in the press would be completely resolved. And it wouldn't be this sort of niche, oh, look, they have one and I've never seen that, right? And so I think that alleviates a lot of the issues that people had with it. And then we can all live happily ever after and wear glass as much as we want. It would be great.
That's amazing. So last week, or was it last week, you had an opportunity to speak with Florence Ion. Hopefully I pronounced her name right, at Greenbot. So we're going to throw in that link in the show notes, and I'm going to hopefully include the show notes. And if I don't, just tweet at me for it. What was that about? What did you take away from it? It seemed amazing. You were introduced as a prolific, active member of the Women Tech Makers, and I completely agree with that.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to say that I'm lucky enough to be able to help them, which is a huge honor, actually. Florence is amazing. I met her through a mutual friend of ours, and we started talking about watch faces, which was great because I love talking about Android Wear too. Talk about that all day. Mm-hmm. That's been super fun to work on. And it's great for me. So I don't really have a measure of like, I don't have a boss that I report to that I get like an annual review or feedback or whatever, right? So I sort of take my feedback as, somebody says, hey, you don't know me, but I loved your watch faces and thanks for doing that, right? So that's sort of the feedback that I work off of. And Florence was nice enough to do that. So it was really an honor to be able to talk with her.
That's amazing. So let's sort of double tap into watch faces and wind this interview down. And I'd like to sort of keep it short, Virginia and I can probably talk for the next hour or so on different things. But just to bring it in, you've been doing a lot with watch faces, and you're also, a business person. You're Mrs. Business if you were a Lego person. Anyway, so as an entrepreneur and as a developer designer in wearable techs, like wearable technologies, like where do watch faces come in? Are watch faces the thing that people look to most when they think about, because of the personal nature or personalization abilities of a watch face? Or are there other things that you'd like to be part of, or other things that that are, equally much sought after when someone gets an Apple Watch or Google Android Wear device?
It sounds weird, but I think when people think about smartwatches, especially when they don't have one and they're thinking about purchasing one, I'm guessing the face isn't the first thing they think of. They're thinking about like a fitness tracker, apps, how do I use it? How does it work for me? And then I think once they have it and they realize they're looking at it all the time, then they realize they want a watch face that they can customize, right? So from where I'm sitting, the people that I know that have Apple Watches, they're sort of frustrated that they don't have that option. It's my favorite thing about Android Wear. I'm biased, but it's true. I think that's so important for wearables especially, and that's my whole thing, that these are personal devices that we have with us and on us all the time. And you have to be able to have it be a reflection of your personality.
That's perfect. So the last question I'm going to ask is, if you could, and I know you're going to cringe at this question, but please,
I trust you. I trust you.
Trust me on this one. If you could impart, I know we're founders, we're all figuring it out as we go along, but you're actually, a lot further than, my niece who's 12 and would love to be the next Virginia Poltrak. If you could give her a word of advice, given that in her case, she's a minority in the US. Actually, she's a minority because she's, African, not African American, and she's a woman. She's going to grow into a woman, and she loves tech, or she loves art and tech. Like, what knowledge would you give her? And she's listening right now. No pressure.
No pressure. I would say that she should and will do whatever that she wants, because she's perfectly capable of it. Nobody has all the answers, no matter what you might think or how they might present themselves. And the best way to sort of silence the critics out there, whether they're trolls on Twitter or the voice in your head, is to just keep doing the best work that you can do, right? So it's very difficult for somebody to sort of give you a hard time or argue with you if you can say, yeah, look, but I did all of this, or I made all of this, or I've come this far, right? So all you have to do is just start. Right. That's the hardest part.
All right, perfect. You've been hearing an interview with today's Lost Explorer, Virginia Poltrak. Virginia is perhaps, and I couldn't say it better myself, she is a glass explorer through and through. When I started this whole idea, I was thinking about who are the awesome people that I'd like to connect with, and Virginia was in my top 10 list, and she's actually probably in my top 3 after this interview. I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm going to be saying this for the next 5 people. So, but you're seriously, an inspiration, not just for your work in glass, but how you conduct yourself in the community. There are some, bad apples in the glass community that made us all look bad. Not to mention any names. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us, everyone. Again, this is a series talking to prolific explorers and enthusiasts with Google Glass and other similar technologies in the world. And I'm just going out, snatching them up and asking them a handful of questions and talking about it. So hopefully we can all learn a thing or two at the end of it. Thank you again, Virginia. Are there any other last words, like somewhere we can find you online? Any Twitter handles?
Ooh, you
Like,
can follow me on Twitter. I'm at vpoltrak, or virginiapoltrak.com has links to all of my social media profiles. So I'm updating that on the regular, so you can check that out.
excellent. Thank you so much, and thank everybody for listening to the show.
Thanks
Really
for
appreciate it.
having me.